At 23 years old, I've finally read the Harry Potter series in its entirety, and no surprises here, it was an absolutely incredible experience immersing myself in this magically enchanting world for the first time. So today, I'm here to explain why I finally gave the series a try, share my thoughts on what makes it so excellent, compare it to my experience with the films, explain why you should read the series if you haven't already, and finally, give you my personal rankings of the books and my top 3 favorite characters. So stick around till the end so you don't miss anything. If you enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more. Growing up, I really wasn't much of a reader. I dipped my toe into some children's books like the Magic Treehouse series or the series of unfortunate events, but it was never something I found a lot of joy in. I never hated reading as some people do. I think I just was always more invested in other media like video games, movies, and music. So unfortunately, I'd grown up never reading the Harry Potter books like so many people in and around my age bracket did. However, given the immense popularity of the Harry Potter movies, I was still a pretty big fan of the franchise. It kind of feels like the movies have an entire fan base of their own, with people perfectly content with that being their version of the story. For the longest time, I felt similarly, but that was until I picked up reading as a major hobby of mine. In my early years of college, I made a vow to start reading books consistently. I was obtaining a degree in English at the time, and I figured someone who wants to pursue a career in some sort of creative writing should be a frequent reader as well. I've always been obsessed with stories in general. Things like film, TV, music, and games have always been of high interest to me, and something I've spent countless hours simply thinking and talking about. But there was a clear gap in my life where reading was lacking. I picked up reading and have fallen in love with the hobby ever since. Naturally, since I started pretty late in life, I had so many books on my TBR that it feels like I could never get around to them all. However, I knew Harry Potter was the series I needed to try as soon as possible. I had already watched the movies before and was a decently big fan of them, so I knew I was bound to enjoy diving deeper and experience the true version of the story for the first time. From the very first book, I knew right away that I was going to read them all. The Sorcerer's Stone is admittedly towards the bottom of my list, but that is not to say it was bad by any means. The Sorcerer's Stone movie is by far the one I had seen the most over the years, so I felt like I understood the story pretty well already. While there were a handful of things that were unique to the book, I thought that it was for the most part identical to the movie. It was also the simplest story of the series by a pretty large margin. The earlier books are clearly aimed at children, which doesn't make them bad in any way, but I do prefer the more adult tone of the later books. The first book does a fantastic job of introducing us to the world of magic. Everything feels so full of life and wonder. That's something that remains consistent throughout the entire series, but I think the first book does it probably the best. Nothing beats the first time Harry steps into Diagon Alley after discovering he was actually a wizard all along. It's so heartwarming to see Harry find his own family and purpose after seeing the horrible situation he has to live with. One of the most impressive aspects of the Harry Potter series is how the tone of the books matures as the characters age in the story. In The Sorcerer's Stone, the plot is much more lighthearted and suitable for a younger audience. By the time we get to the Deathly Hallows, I can genuinely feel the stakes and pressure of the situation that Harry and the entire wizarding world were under. The characters also behave in ways typical of their age group as the story progresses. In Order of the Phoenix, Harry spent much of the book brooding and throwing tantrums about his situation. While a lot of that anger was justified, the way he would lash out conveyed his age very strongly. Harry's character growth was masterfully written. Through each book in the series, you can see Harry gain confidence in his abilities and his determination hardens. The way romance is handled throughout the series is also quite perfect. It reminds me of the cringe-worthy days of my high school experience. Harry's relationship with Cho Chang and Jenny were handled differently due to his maturity level and experience at the time. Ron and Hermione's relationship was a slow burn, but it was apparent from as far back as Goblet of Fire that something was going on. The character dynamics feel so realistic and authentic. When I finished the series, I felt sad to say goodbye to these characters I've connected so intensely with. Unlike many other stories aimed at kids, several important characters die by the end of the series. These deaths spark a lot of change in Harry and the wizarding world as a whole. I felt the weight of every death in the series, and they genuinely affected me in a big way. That's something I often have gripes with in media, where characters seem to survive every life-threatening situation. Death isn't necessary in everything, but when you are writing a story with a villain who is the most powerful and evil being the whole world has ever seen, death is completely necessary to intensify the fear and anxiety the reader must feel towards the antagonist. So kudos to J.K. Rowling for not holding back in this regard. Hogwarts might be one of the best locations in all of fiction. That place is filled to the brim with a fantastical aura. It helps that I've already seen the movies. Still, I think Rowling does an outstanding job of characterizing the place where the movies serve only as a helping hand to the creativity of your own imagination. I can go on and on about the incredibly unique and interesting areas of Hogwarts. You have the Room of Requirement, Forbidden Forest, Hagrid's hut, Trelawney's classroom, Dumbledore's office, Snape's classroom, all the house common rooms, the Quidditch field, the Whomping Willow, the Great Hall, and many more that are so distinct from each other and that every person who reads this series surely knows quite well. The world building as a whole is intricate and detailed, which genuinely makes the world feel alive and real to me. I felt like every time I opened one of the books, I was transported into another world, radiating with charm. I really don't have many negatives to say about reading these books. I thoroughly enjoyed each edition in the series. I do have maybe a few nitpicks. Ron sometimes irritated me throughout the series because he felt like he would just randomly get an attitude at times. It seemed to happen in almost every book. All in all though, I still love Ron. He's a ride or die at the end of the day. Another slight complaint I had was that towards the end of the series, it felt like some of the magic and wonder were missing, which made the earlier books so enjoyable. It's hard for me to critique that though, because the situation they were in was much more intense than earlier on. A part of me likes that this is the case because it created a very uneasy tone with Voldemort's rise, which I think added to the terror I felt about him. It felt like Voldemort was sucking the life out of the wizarding world and Harry had to go through the mud to bring that spark back. I do have a hot take here though. I'm actually not crazy about Quidditch in the books. I find the matches enjoyable, but I know most people really love Quidditch. It was just kind of a distraction at times from the plot that I really cared about in the story. The earlier Quidditch games before Voldemort returned were a lot more fun to me, but once that happened, I felt it was odd that we would focus on a school game when so much stress was underlying it all. Once again, just a slight nitpick though, I still enjoyed pretty much everything in the books. Now let's talk about my experience reading the books after growing up on the movies. Firstly, once I started the series, I made it a point not to watch any of the movies until I had read that book. This was because I wanted to eliminate my perception of the story from the movies and try to picture the events, characters, and locations as best I could solely through the books. This, of course, was effective in some areas and ineffective in others. The location of Hogwarts, for example, I pretty much always associated with the movie version because it's so ingrained in my mind and it's just iconic. Many of the major characters I also viewed as the actors who played them. Oddly enough though, I did not view Harry as Daniel Radcliffe. After reading the books, I've decided I'm not crazy about Daniel Radcliffe's portrayal of the older Harry. His younger self was great, but once he was older, I felt like he was missing the coolness and confidence that Harry had in the books. I pretty much imagine Ron and Hermione's actors when reading the books. They were a pretty spot on casting. My perception of Dumbledore underwent a significant change while reading. Beforehand, I had imagined Michael Gambon as the character almost exclusively, but now I see Richard Harris as the more accurate portrayal. He had a much better elegance and calm demeanor that I think fit the character a little better. One person who is vastly different in the books from the movies is Ginny Weasley. Oh my god, they did her so dirty in the movies. She was honestly a badass in the books. She's confident, outspoken, skilled, and all the guys in the school think she's beautiful. I can't believe how they changed her character in the movies. Her relationship with Harry is felt so strongly throughout the books, and I think that was something that was really needed in the movies. I need them to get that right in the Harry Potter TV series. Overall, I think the movies were excellent adaptations of the books, but I did gain a great deal of clarity on the intricacies of the plot and the depths of each character. Harry was the most drastic change for me, because we read everything through his point of view and can hear his inner dialogue. This is something I think is heavily missing in the movies as well. Harry had a lot more depth in the books, but I understand it's not easy to convey that on a movie screen. Exploring Tom Riddle's past in The Half-Blood Prince was especially impactful for me in understanding the character of Voldemort. Before reading the books, I hadn't realized how egotistical and arrogant Voldemort is. He makes several mistakes directly because of this character trait. In the movies, Voldemort feels more strategic, omniscient, and logical, whereas in the books, I think that he's so power-hungry that his own pursuit blinds him. He really thinks he's smarter than he actually is, and seems to underestimate Harry and Dumbledore. I really enjoyed this change in perspective I had for him. The movies did condense a lot of the books to fit into a cohesive runtime, which I don't fault them for. The Goblet of Fire and Half-Blood Prince movies felt particularly rushed after reading the books. I implore anyone who is a big fan of the Harry Potter movies and hasn't read the books to give the series a try. You'll discover new elements, a broader perspective, and a deeper understanding of the story in general. If you haven't read the books or seen any of the movies, I want to try and persuade you on why you're missing out. A common complaint the series receives is that it's made for kids, therefore adults are not likely to enjoy it. I disagree with this take on multiple levels simply because adults can enjoy things aimed at kids as well. Additionally, this series is not made for kids. It is accessible to them, meaning that the reading level is not extremely difficult and that there is not really a lot of profanity for the most part. But that is not to say it's like reading Magic Treehouse or something like that. The series genuinely does age up after every book. When The Sorcerer's Stone was released in 1997, lots of children read it, but as those children grew up, Harry did as well, and so did the content of the story. By the end of the series, we're dealing with a lot of real trauma, death, and other adult themes that wouldn't be described as aimed at children. If you're someone who doesn't read at all and has the slightest desire to give the hobby a try, take it from someone who didn't read for enjoyment for most of my life that it's one of the best places to start. As I mentioned, the reading level is relatively tame, but the story remains super engaging nonetheless. I don't doubt that if you enjoy the first book, you will definitely enjoy the entire series. It could ignite a new hobby for you that you never knew you'd be into. Alright, from here, I want to talk about my top 3 favorite characters and my rankings of the books. By far, my favorite character in the series is Hermione. Hermione has everything going for her. She's brilliant, brave, an amazing friend. She's logical and beautiful. So many times throughout the series where Harry and Ron were being dumbasses, Hermione just came swooping in to knock their heads together and get things done. She's the rock of the trio, if you ask me. She's also a ride or die for her friends and always seems to have the answers to everything. I love every character in the trio, but Hermione just stood out as the most grounded one that I personally relate with the most. After her, I've gotta give it to Luna Lovegood. Luna is so charming to me. It felt like every time she was in the room, she would make me laugh or smile just because of her quirky nature. I love how she is so unapologetically herself. That quality is so appealing to me in people. Like Hermione, she's also a ride or die for her friends. Her character is so unique in the story. No one can match her personality, and I love her for that. Finally, my third favorite character is none other than the goat of the house elves, Dobby. Dobby is the ultimate ride or die for Harry Potter, and like Luna, he has his own quirks that just make me smile whenever he's on the page. I can't get enough of Dobby. He's so adorable and has such a big heart. I love how he stands out amongst the house elves due to his relationship with Harry. Don't even get me started on his part in the Deathly Hallows. My guy was the best friend a guy could have. It's hard to choose just 3 characters as my favorite, because this series is absolutely stocked full with excellent characters. A few honorable mentions in no particular order go to Harry Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, Voldemort, and Professor McGonagall. My rankings of the books are challenging for me, because many of them I found to be relatively even. I have to give first place to the Deathly Hallows though. This book had me hooked from start to finish, and the conclusion was nearly perfect. I loved seeing the character growth that Harry went through by the end of the series. I felt that Voldemort's defeat was executed spectacularly. The ending of the books was much better than the movie, I have to say, even though the movie was pretty epic. After that, I would go the Goblet of Fire. I thoroughly enjoy the Triwizard Tournament and seeing the 2 other wizarding schools come to Hogwarts. The ending is really what takes the cake though. The return of Voldemort might be my favorite section in the entire series. This was also where things started to transition into a more serious tone, which I found pretty refreshing. Third place goes to the Half-Blood Prince. As I stated earlier, I loved learning more about Tom Riddle. The introduction of the Horcruxes was a super cool concept as well. The section where Harry and Dumbledore find that locket in the cave was my favorite in the book. It was so creepy and unlike anything I've seen in the rest of the series before or after. The ending of the book is also madness and kicks off the wild events of the Deathly Hallows. Fourth place, I'm gonna go Order of the Phoenix. Admittedly, this book has a lot of fluff that made it a bit of a drag to get through at times, but there was much to love at the same time. Umbridge was a compelling antagonist and made me physically angry every time she was on the page. Harry's character also underwent some significant changes in this book. I could see our trio really starting to age. I was impressed with the character writing in this book by Rowling. The Order of the Phoenix is also a really interesting group to read about. I felt like this was the first book where we were given a lot of lore, which is something I get really engulfed in. The tone also shifted to a more mature feel finally, which I enjoy a bit more than the childish tone of the earlier books. Fifth place, I'd give to The Prisoner of Azkaban. This one is my favorite movie by far, so I was actually slightly disappointed by the differences from this book. I still loved it a lot, of course. It's just that the time travel element was so cool to me in the movie. I didn't realize it was going to be so different in the book. Still, there's so much to praise here. Sirius Black was an outstanding addition to the series. He's one of my favorite characters for sure and plays a massive role in Harry's life. My favorite section of the book is when the trio discovers that Scabbers is actually Peter Pettigrew. That was a crazy twist I don't think anyone saw coming. Lupin is also fantastic in this book. He's probably Harry's most influential professor, excluding Dumbledore. We also get introduced to some staples of the series and Dementors and the Patronus spell. All in all, really great addition to the series. After that, I'm gonna go The Chamber of Secrets. Even though I had seen the movie adaptation of this book a good number of times, I actually hadn't remembered the plot too well. I was really intrigued in the mystery of who opened the Chamber of Secrets and what was going on with Tom Riddle's diary. I think my favorite section of this book is when Ron and Harry meet Aragog. It was so creepy and genuinely made my skin crawl. Rowling described that event so well. Coming in last place is The Sorcerer's Stone. Once again, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I had just seen the movie countless times and preferred the darker and older tone of the later books. It's still so fantastic how it thrusts you into this magical world that feels so real. I don't take it for granted one bit. I just enjoy discovering new elements I hadn't known before in the books that follow this one. My favorite section is probably Harry's first Quidditch game. Alright, and there we have it. These are my full thoughts on reading Harry Potter for the first time as an adult. Once again, I'm so happy I gave this series a try, and this is certainly something I will pass down to my kids. I encourage anyone who hasn't read these books to pick them up. If you're not a big reader, just try and do one chapter a day. That's all you need to start a new hobby that you could end up really enjoying. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. See you in the next one.